Good morning there, everyone. How you doing today? I'm going to talk about passions for a minute. The loss of passion, rather. Do you find yourself just not having that same passion you once had for your interests, for your hobbies, or your work? Or perhaps you had a passion for hobbies and then decided to turn that into work, and now you have no passion for it. This happens more often than we realize. This is why I enjoy playing music. I like playing guitar. Um, I like creating songs, writing songs, but I stepped away from any plan to make it any form of a career. I used to play in a band with my brother, and I remember he wanted to take it a little, more seriously than I did. And even back then, I knew if you delve too much into a passion and you depend on income for it, it becomes work. And it's very hard to make work your passion. But this goes kind of outside of that realm of just work and passion. This is a question of the modern day and what we're exposed to. And I heard somebody talking about this earlier, and he was talking about being over 50. And he said, it's not the age, it's not getting older. There are plenty of passionate people who are, well into their 80s. It's the passion has to come from a place of authenticity. And this is what I was thinking earlier about how, being authentic has become harder and harder. It's more and more sought out and desired. Like, there's nothing I love more than when I'm flipping through YouTube looking for something decent and, AI garbage after, sponsored crap. Next thing's, somebody who sounds serious, but you find out that they're funded by somebody else. And it's like everybody's saying what they have to say to get the right attention. So we're living in the attention economy, right? But with that, the unique nature of what used to set people apart from one another, such as this crazy inventor, right, who spends his whole life working on this one thing, and that's his passion, his interest in society. Even at the time, might kind of think, this dude's nuts, but in the end, we see the results and we think, wow, this is awesome, and it helps to influence us to want to have our own passions and to discover something new and exciting. So I think it's multifaceted, the problem. One is that we feel like, and this is maybe folks wouldn't agree with this, but that everything that's worth inventing has been invented. And I don't mean that we won't come up with amazing new discoveries and inventions and materials, but I mean the idea of progress as an evolution to humans having to do less work, like the old 50s kind of illusion of the robots doing all the work for us. We found out we just don't want that. People want to do the work. Um, Even if it's just kind of that, getting into that Zen state of doing the dishes or gardening work, things like this, things that we actually enjoy. But why is it so hard to be passionate about it? There's a club for everything now. With, the exposure to the internet, there's a place for everybody. But with that also comes this idea that, well, other people within my group, they think this, or they act this way, or this is something they're interested in. And then they move on to doing what other people do. I don't, not prepared with examples here, but you can imagine like trends within, say, the sewing community, right? Or the, musicians, certain styles and scales, and everybody wants to be part of the club. Everybody wants to be able to say, hey, look, I'm doing this too. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. There's absolutely not. In fact, being part of a community is really everything to being a human. This is why people go to sewing circles, the same reason as why people go to church. And what it comes down to is we want connection with other humans. And through what we do with our lives and our passions, we connect with other people. But now, everybody is so hyper connected that we've completely disconnected from one another. But also, it's very hard to be unique. It's very hard to be noticed. And it's always been like this, but at least, even back in the day, like Think about the, millions of kids who dreamed about being rock stars and going to LA. At least back in my day in the 80s, it was the thing. You wanted to go to LA and get signed and play gigs down at the Whiskey A Go Go and get your name out there. But even though it was only 1 in a million chance that you'd actually be noticed, there was still that mental aspect people had where I might be that one. It's the same idea of buying a lottery ticket. And but today, now we know and we can see everything's done digitally, everything's different, and it's all based on, not just camaraderie or even being unique, but how well you fit into somebody else's idea. And because I just feel like there's just so many things bearing down on us right now. We can choose what we expose ourselves to, right? And I also think that immersing ourselves in, if you can't handle, for example, like what's going on with, big issues in the world or wars, these things drive people insane thinking about them all the time. I'm the kind of person who can actually look at the news, look at politics and say, interesting. I can disagree with something or think something's wrong without getting, internally angry about it. But here's what I found is that a lot of folks can't. And we can't opt out of all the chaos in the world. Everyone's talking about it. Did you hear about what this guy did and that guy did? Look, when I was a kid, we didn't talk about politics because they weren't exciting. And that's the way it should have been. That was the way it's supposed to be. Americans are just living their lives, and we've got people in charge that are supposed to be holding the fort down so we can go out and go about our day, right? But now everybody's just in everybody else's business. And there seems to be this idea that there's a right way to do everything, one way, and I think it just takes the passion out of people, like the idea of even striving to do something interesting. Like I was saying, just doing something for the sake of doing it. Like I grabbed my camera this morning. It's just a Panasonic Micro Four Thirds mirrorless camera, detachable lens type and shit. Just your basic. I love this camera. I went back to it when I lost my other one, and it's old, it's beat up, the screen doesn't work on it anymore. It's got a vintage lens that I had to get an adapter for, and it's just fun. And I've got this extension ring where I can use it to take like macro photography of insects, stuff like that. So about 10 years ago, I had a huge passion for photography. And everywhere I went, I would spend, countless hours setting up for the perfect shots, doing light painting at night and getting the shutter speed, learning and teaching myself all this shit about cameras. I never took a photography class, so I had to learn about shutter speed and aperture and all that. And after a while, I just kind of lost interest in it and moved on to something else. I think that's when I started building guitars, because for a while I had a passion for building electric guitars, and I have a whole bunch of unfinished ones. But just even though I may not stick with one passion, going from thing to thing and being able to just enjoy what you do is such an important part of life, in my opinion. Do not feel guilty because you go out and you take thousands of pictures and you have no intention of selling any of those pictures. Hell, I don't mind if people used my pictures. I've got a whole thing of awesome photography I'd be more than happy to let people use. I'm not going to sell it on Shutterstock. I could. That would be great if I could, but my point here isn't that you shouldn't monetize what you do. My point is that if you have a passion and you don't want to do it for the money, then just keep doing it. Don't let society tell you any different, right? It could be anything. When I go out camping or out in the woods, sometimes I like to, take natural items like, sticks and rocks and build little kind of, anything, whatever, a little miniature, or maybe draw a big picture. Think of it as like drawing a picture in the sand. People go to the beach and they draw a huge picture in the sand or build a sandcastle. Or you could think of the mandalas that, the Buddhist monks make, where afterwards they just dump all the colored powder off and it's like, it's done, get rid of it. It's recognition of the temporal nature of everything. And we as humans try to hang on to everything so much that just having something that you can just do for the fun of it and just just do it. Even when I was building guitars, I actually intended that as a business, and I still do, because it's, expensive to buy all the materials. But the passion part of it, I still wanted to spend the time to try new things and do things a different way. We always tend to play it safe, you know, stick with what's known. And I guess I've just always enjoyed blazing my own trail. And the same with music. I've written hundreds of songs in my life, and most of them I have no idea where they are or what they are, and maybe a dozen or so that I still have written that I could still play. Some of them I shared on YouTube. A few years back, I got into guitar again for a little while and wrote a few quick songs, and that was it. And then I moved on to something else. But I used to use recording software. Back then it was like Sony Acid. I think it was one of the earlier ones before, like, Pro Tools and everything else. But I you have to spend a long time learning how to use this software, right? But once you get it, you can actually start, putting together some really cool songs. So I made, like, all this music and recorded it, and then it just sat, and it still sits on a hard drive. It was never intended to even share. So I guess if you have a passion like that, don't let it die. Never let it die. You might rekindle something later, and I'd say more importantly than not letting your passions die, don't fight it if you're not interested anymore. It's okay if you lose interest in something you do, because guess what? 10 years down the line, you might pick it right back up, right where you left off. Maybe it's just mountain biking, or maybe it's building mountain bikes, or maybe it's, sailing or hiking or treasure hunting. Hell, gold prospecting, something I've always dreamed of doing. Probably walk home with nothing most of the time. It's a lot of work. But once in a while, you get a score. But the point is, it's not even about the score, right? It's the camaraderie, other people, hanging out, doing something, going out in nature. So blaze your own trail and find your passion, and that's all I got to say for the day. I'm going to head off to something that used to be a passion, carpentry. No, it still is. I used to build a lot of, like, small boxes, and I like doing small woodwork, but that came from being a carpenter. But now I'm remodeling that old house of mine that really should be on the market now, and trying not to let the passion of construction get swept away by having to do it, right? When we're forced to do something, it's easy to lose interest. It can still be interesting, but maybe not a passion. Anyhow, those are my thoughts for the day, and that's what I had to say. So I bid you all farewell, and I hope you have something that you're passionate about. Yeah, I do. Look at that tree. Ah, she's a beauty, ain't she? Adios.